not just have it a one-off event, but have it an annual event. And where Yarmouth is so close to Shag Harbor, Yarmouth really is the only area that could hold it as far as seating and putting on an event like that. So we have the Grand Hotel booked, but it really would be, I guess, a festival between the town of Yarmouth, Shelburne, Shag Harbor. If it could be grown to a decent size, you could have ongoing things over, say, a 3 or 4 day period in all those communities. For this year, we just have the 2 days booked. I submitted a budget. It's probably going to cost us about $12,000 to put the event on. That's because of the speakers, the hotel rooms, the travel, etc. And to be honest, I don't know if the society is good with me saying this, but I will, but that's pretty much all the money that the society has. So if we put this on and the whole thing flops, it really will never probably be tried to put on again. It's going to be, we hope, a world-class event that we hope would at least break even, but we're unsure of how that's going to play out with COVID and travel and everything else. But the hope is that anybody that would show up would come away with a really good experience. They would go back, they would tell their friends, and they'd want to come back again the next year. And we would grow the event. I know the fellow who started the Wharf Rally in Digby. I was raised in Digby, and that's, you're all familiar with what that has become, right? Kind of a couple more things I'll say, but we know the money that was invested in the Peggy's Cove, or the lighthouse, right? So I don't think really any money's been invested on trying to promote or grow the Shag Harbor event. I heard from a third party that Chris D'Entremont used to say that when people get off the ferry here in Yarmouth, they would ask two things: where's Peggy's Cove and where's Shag Harbor, right? And there's probably some truth to that. But again, you drive by those little poor signs, the museum's open hardly, very few hours. You go in, it's musty. Anyway, it'd be nice to have an event like this, raise money, and then improve that museum and really make it a world-class destination for tourists. Roswell, New Mexico has got a lot of press with what happened there. They have a 4-day festival every year, and they get between 10 and I think 12 or 14,000 people attending their 4-day event. I mean, if we had 10% of that, which wouldn't be a stretch at all, that would be a nice event. And with the time of the year, it's on what's called, I guess, the shoulder season of the tourist season, right? It'd be the first weekend in October. So it's not going to conflict with much else that's happening. It'd be nice to draw a lot of people to this area that time of the year. And it's a beautiful time of year in this area. And it might bring people in a few days early, stay a few days later. So the bottom line is we'd like to try to get funding to help put the event on. And in the event that it doesn't make a profit this year, we're not bust, and we can try to grow it and have it again next year. I think I submitted a request for $3,000. I'm not sure if this group wanted a dollar amount, but I'm going to try to get 4 from the town of Yarmouth and 3 from the municipality of Yarmouth, 3 from Argyle municipality, and 3 from municipality of Shelburne. That would make sure that we don't go bust and that we can try to have it again. And that is about it. I won't, sorry, I tend to do a lot of talking, but I won't try to oversell you on the whole, what happened in '67, but anybody that's read about it or that's into it, it is pretty cool. Maybe we'll scroll through the website just quick, if we can do that. Scroll up the page. Can you scroll the website just to, because it's only showing about the top third of the page. Yeah, and then if you click on speakers, if that's live. So you could Google UFO Expo. The YASTA site has a link to it. But the website was professionally done. We paid to get that done. It lists the speakers, their credentials, what they've done, has a link to the tickets that are on sale now through Eventbrite. It has the agenda, of course. And I think it looks, and I've looked at other sites, it's pretty impressive. And again, if we can promote this properly, anybody realizing that this event is being held here in Yarmouth would just be blown away by that. So I know my time's up. I'll take a few questions if there are any.
All right, I'll open up the floor here in a second. First of all, a lot of people don't know this. I actually have one of those coins.
Cool.
I actually have one of those coins that was given to me on my birthday because I'm also a big sci-fi fan, a big Trekkie fan. So it's a little unknown fact that a lot of people don't know.
I'll throw this out, again, I apologize, but there were two representatives from the Canadian Mint in Shag Harbor at the Woods Harbor Hall, I guess, when this coin was unveiled. And there were coins there for sale. And I drove down an hour early, wanted to make sure I'd get one. And I thought the place would be packed. And again, it was the night of one of these events. But that's what I was thinking was going to happen. I drove down, there was like 3 cars in the lot, and there was maybe 17 people. And just nobody knew about it. And these coins, they were, again, it was the fastest selling coin. People had a hard time getting it. But there were so many allotted to the Shag Harbor Museum to sell that night.
Yep.
But nobody knew it.
So that's a little unknown fact about a lot of people. The first one on the docket is Councillor Daniel Allen. You have the floor.
So this is a little known fact as well. I'm very, very, very seldom, but I'm the first one out of the gate with something to say.
Okay?
But,
Is that good or bad?
no, you know what? I think this is an awesome idea. I'll be very honest. I'm similar to our warden. I'm a sci-fi guy. I have friends that go down to Shag Harbor every year faithfully to the museum and things. I believe this definitely belongs in our grant requests. And I see Mark sitting behind you, and I think he is a guy that could help you out by getting this to us through the proper channel somehow.
Okay.
And I'd like to see you get hooked up with Yasta to get some advertising and something. I agree with you. I think festivals, this kind of falls under almost like a festival type of thing, and I think it would be something that would draw people.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of us weirdos out there that like this stuff, and
Everybody I talk to says it's like a diamond in the rough. Everybody agrees it's a very much untapped.
it's the first time I've heard
idea.
this. It's the first time I've heard this idea on this scale.
Yeah.
And no, I'm
So I've talked to Neil McKenzie, I've met with Rick Allwright, met with Pam Mood, talked to a lot of people. Wade Cleveland's all over it, he's excited by it, thinks it'd be cool, he
Right.
wants to help. Fraser Mooney's
So I would,
into
well,
that.
Fraser's a friend of mine, so I would like to see this coming before us as a grant request. If, you know, I think that's probably the proper channel for this. I could be wrong, but I think that's the proper channel. And I would be looking forward to seeing this come in front of us.
Awesome.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Yes,
Deputy
thank-
Warden Trevor Cunningham, sorry.
Thank you for the presentation. It was excellent. And I was aware of I've been aware of the incident for many, many years. But I regret not having visited the museum, so I will try to visit the museum at some point in time when it is open. I think it's a great idea, and looking forward to having it brought forward to I'm assuming grants will be brought through our grant process. And I think it has legs. I mean, I too, must be something about being elected to council, but I too like science fiction and did see Star Wars when I was 10, so many of us have been there. So yeah, and in any event, like science fiction and interested in it, and I can tell you the people that like it are very passionate about it.
Yeah.
And you're correct, they will travel. So
Yeah.
I think it has the ability to have some legs for the area in terms of attracting people and filling hotel rooms and all that other good stuff. So anyway, thank you, and I'd be very receptive to working with you as a counselor. Yeah.
Again, with the ferry running, there's like a huge population right there in the eastern seaboard. Drive up, park the car, jump on, 4,000 or 5,000 people, right? Yeah. Well, not gonna get those on the ferry in one shot. Anyway, we'll get a bigger ferry.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm happy to hear that you've met with Rick Allwright as well, because I think that's a similar time as the runway run that they put on at the airport, and I kind of see those events kind of coming together maybe, or somehow share some of the publicity that you could put together for those events. So I'm really excited. It'd be interesting to hear about any of the technology or any of the, not events, but anything that you could bring to the event that would create a bigger show even. I think for something like this, flashy is better. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you can put together, and I think you have some support here at the
I'll
table.
throw this out. I've talked to 3 different breweries about having a beer brewing contest, like Alien Ale, Martian Hops is another one. Anyway, but they're on board. We could do that. It's pumpkin season. You could do an alien pumpkin decorating contest, right? So there's 3 or 4 other ideas that you could have along with the conference side of it. To, yeah, create awareness, excitement, get people to the area, would be pretty cool. Yeah.
Councillor Warren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thanks, Dan. Dan and I know each other from many years ago, but I'm aware of the incident down in Woods Harbor, but when you showed the coin and put the light on it, it brought back a memory of mine. I might be giving away my age, but 2 buddies of mine, we were coming over to my mom and dad's place and driving the truck, and we seen these 3 lights up in the sky. They were just there, and all of a sudden they just took off. And when you showed me that coin with the light on it, that brought my memory back.
Deja vu.
I was really, 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 really young at that age. Thank you.
That's Star Wars right there.
Isn't that funny? Another little known fact about me, I have a Marvin Martian sticker on my new jet ski. So
Okay.
that's how sci-fi related I am.
Yeah.
One thing I
cool.
wanted to mention to you is the application process for our grants opens January 1st and closes April 15th of each year. So get in contact with Mark, the guy behind you, and actually some counselors had indicated they're looking forward to
Yeah.
the application.
Awesome. Thanks.
So thank you very much. You can sit up in the gallery, there's enough room. Oh, he has to go. You don't have a I'm not gonna say it. Beam me up, Scotty. Don't have a hoverboard or anything like that? No. Thank you. All right, we'll wait for Jenny to wipe down the seating area for the next presentator. I didn't realize we had so many sci-fi fans in this council. 3 or 4 years ago in Halloween, I dressed up as a flying saucer. Had a tinfoil hat, you know, all that stuff. Oh, there's photos out there, trust me. All right, the next one on the agenda is item 6.2. We have with us the Director of Municipal Services, Abid Malik. Abid, welcome. Just hit the red button on the transporter device, and I'll turn you on. You'll beam me on. There you go, you're live streaming.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Warden and members of the council, Good afternoon. Today, my presentation and RFD is about getting council approval to move ahead with Moody's asset management program. Moody owns and operates a number of infrastructure assets to provide services to its residents. These assets needs to be maintained and managed in a sustainable manner to get the maximum benefits while reducing risk and providing required level of service. Federal government provides federal gas tax funding to municipalities for the renewal, replacement, and upgrading of the assets. In the coming years, federal government is going to make it mandatory for the municipalities in Nova Scotia to have asset management plans in place in order to get federal gas tax dollars. Therefore, being proactive and following up on council strategic plan, Modi would like to move forward with asset management program. With that, I start my presentation. So, according to Federation of Canadian Municipalities, asset management is an integrated approach involving all municipal departments to choosing and managing existing and new assets in order to maximize benefits, reduce risks, and provide satisfactory level of service to the community in a sustainable manner. Good asset management practices are fundamental to achieving sustainable and resilient communities. Hierarchy of asset management system, organizational strategic plan, which we have it. We already have asset management policy approved by the council. Then we are here now talking about asset management strategy and roadmap. I'm going to present in this, with this RFD, this is the strategy, and we want to move ahead on this roadmap. And once we have this approved by the council, we will develop asset management plans and operational strategies and capital plan. Here is another representation of the whole process. It starts with the data capture, and then it moves on to the final asset management plans and financial reports. So basically, the idea is we should know what do we own, where it is located, what is the replacement value of those assets, what is the current condition of those assets, and what is the remaining life of those assets. And then we define the level of service required by the council and our residents, and what is the risk involved. And then based on that, we develop prioritized projects out of that. And based on those prioritized projects, we develop capital plan for replacement, rehabilitation, or whatnot. So this is an iterative process. It has to be done every year based on the priorities. So previously, Modi participated in a cohort program which was organized by AIMS Network, and AIMS stands for Atlantic Infrastructure Management Network. These are consultants specialized in asset management. So Modi participated in that program. Policy was developed. They assessed the level of service. They collected wastewater data, and they developed basically a model program for the wastewater collection system. So what's next? sorry. Okay, so basically, what we are trying to do here is, we are proposing that we should hire the same consultants. They are familiar with the development of asset management plans and programs they have developed in Nova Scotia. We can, by hiring them, we can leverage the federal funding for development of the program. And so we can move forward. Whatever was there, we will build on it. And what they will do is they will do the update the policy, they will update the roadmap, level of service assessments, and they will develop the capital plans for every class of, every asset classes. So the same concept, as I mentioned before, the whole process will be developed based on the systems and standards developed by Nova Scotia Municipal Affairs Department. So they will take it and use those guidelines and develop our asset management program based on that. Once we have all this state of the infrastructure report developed for all the assets, and we know the risks and the financial situation, based on those, we will develop the 5, 20, and 100-year capital plans. So basically, they will, these are the deliverables they will deliver, as I mentioned. Capital plan. Capital plan consists of, these are the components, what is the purpose, where the revenue is coming from, what are the regulatory requirements, risk assessment and level of service. These all are the components taken into account to develop a capital plan. So this is just a sample. At the end of the day, when everything will be set, we have all the plans, we have prioritized the projects. This is a representation of a 20-year capital plan. So it shows a set of, all these columns are organized in 5 years, and then each column represents the number of projects in those and the types of projects. So basically, the red line shows that this is the amount of money Modi will need. This is the total demand we need in the next 20 years. So basically, in the first 5 years, we need 1.5 million. In the next 5 years, we need 1.8 million, and the next is maybe 2 million. So we should be thinking in a long-term way how to save the money, what priorities will be there, and how we will fund them. There are 2 lines on that. One is the brown line and one is the green line. So it shows, this is just a sample graph, but once we develop our own graph and our own program, that will give us the idea how much funding gaps we have. So it's basically, at the end of the day, when this will be developed, the consultants and us will come back to council and show all these graphs and programs. This is another 100-year scenario, and 100 year is a long time, but it is developed to show where a spike can come just after 20 years or after 50 years. So we should all be very mindful of how we plan things. This is just a 5-year plan. It shows that in 5 years, if you see, the projects can move around, but at the end of the day, we need 5 million over 5 years. So that's how the plans will be developed. These are just sample projects. Sorry, where is, there was a governance model, but yeah, here's the governance model of asset management program. We have the council, warden council, then CAO, then the steering committee, then the champion, and then the service areas, and that's how FCM and the standard way of doing the asset management. So this is the detailed work plan we have developed with the consultants. If council approves and give us go-ahead today, consultants can submit application tomorrow to FCM. The date is little off because it was developed for December 9 meeting. Today is 16, so they can submit tomorrow. And then it may take 4 to 5 months to get the funding from the FCM. FCM funds up to $50,000, and 80% of the project cost. Moody will have to contribute about $12,500. Once we have the go-ahead from FCM, these are the plans. Our consultants will work with us, and by the end of March 31st, 2023, we will be ready with our financial and capital plans to come to council, and hopefully our 2023 budget and capital plan will be reflected, will be taking into account all these asset management process, and it will be a systematic recommendation to the council. And with that, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Well, thank you very much, Abid. For me, capital plans and long-term thinking
Yeah.
over the course is very important. So we try to mitigate the risks, especially when it comes to all of the assets that are owned by the municipality district of Yarmouth. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over the floor to Councillor Lauren Cushing. You have the floor.
Thank you, Abid. Asset management has been very dear to my heart. I was on, when we first started doing this, when council representative, right? And very interesting. It's a very needed plan that we need, and I fully endorse the asset management plan. I've always been the advocate for some type of management plan because, you know, we always seem to get lost in. I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but the fluffy things, but we need to really look after the stuff that we can't see, like the sewers and the buildings themselves, and they deteriorate, and all of a sudden we're in a big problem area so we have to plan for that stuff. So it's a great project that we should make sure that we have the numbers in our budget to keep moving this on. So thank you for working with us on this. So
Thank you, sir.
thank you a bit.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you for an excellent presentation, and obviously our gas tax dollars, which I guess equate to about $500,000 a year, are important to Modi to keep up and improve our infrastructure and maintain what we have. I guess a question, and I'll continue on after, but you know, is climate change, will that be, obviously in the 100-year piece, that will be figured in as best you can. Obviously, as we go further in the future, the certainties around the funding required obviously is reduced. I did really like that figure that had sort of the area under the curve for the total amount of dollars required versus, you know, not the area under the curve. The area under the curve is the funding available.
That's right.
Yeah, and the bar graphs, the columns are you know, anticipated funds required. So that's really good for the public, communicates it easily for us and the public. So I thought that was good in terms of what we're going to be looking at developing to sort of manage our assets. So I guess having said that, perhaps I'll allow you time to certainly answer the question I posed around climate change, but I'm assuming that you did say yes, so to that. But I will move the motion to get it on the floor. So be it resolved that council directs staff to apply for a grant opportunity from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program for asset management, inventory, and capital projects. Be it therefore resolved that the municipality of the District of Yarmouth commits to conducting the following activities in its proposed project, submitted to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program to advance our asset management program. Activity 1, review and update the asset management policy, asset management roadmap, and level of service assessment. Activity 2, prepare an inventory of major assets, including sewer, road, sidewalk, street lights, municipal-owned buildings and structures, trails, and fleet, and spreadsheet, and GIS, Geographical Information Systems. Activity 3, prepare state of infrastructure reports and a preliminary capital program. Be it further resolved that the municipality of District of Yarmouth commits $12,500 from its budget towards the cost of this initiative. And I'm very pleased that it will be cost shared with FCM, so that's a win for us. Thank you.
Thank you,
All right,
sir.
everyone, there's a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? I do believe Councillor Lauren Cushion seconds that. So a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on the motion? Oh, sorry, yes, and the Deputy Warden did ask you a question in regards to climate change, so you have the opportunity a bit to answer that. My apologies, Deputy Warden.
Through the chair, Councillor Cunningham, yes, climate change layer or lens will be there when they are developing the program. If you see, I think it's Appendix A. When I was discussing with them, I think they mentioned it will be there, but if it is not there, it will be there. Thank you.
I see no other comments, but I do have one comment. Abid, you weren't here over the past years that I've been here. I'm starting to age myself now. But there's always been questions for me, especially when it comes to our assets in regards to sewer systems. There's sewer mounds that are out in the, where is it? South Ohio area. And every year I ask our financial director, what's the life expectancy of these things, and how long is it going to be before we need to do any repairs and or replacement? And every year I ask the same question, and then I ask another question during current taxing, or the money, is the money going to hold up, and what's coming down the road? So for me, this is a must.
That's right.
An absolute must. There's other assets that we have out there, and it also includes vehicles, equipment, our buildings. of course, down the road, this building, believe it or not, is already over 10 years old, and we've already had to do a little bit of repairs to the roof due to the wind and where it's located. So things like that, for me, thinking long-term into the future is certainly money well spent. So there's, the surprises are mitigated rather than just jump out of the blue. Well,
That's right.
so is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. So we're going to bring this forward to regular council, which is going to happen later today. So that's going to be one of the recommendations from Committee of the Whole. And I got to make sure I write this down so I do not miss it. So please, everyone, bear with me. Thank you, Abid.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, council.
All right. Moving on, item number 7, correspondence for action. We have in front of us the 7.1.1.1, a motion that was previously made by council in the previous term, and we also have in front of us item 7.1.1.2, letter from the town of Yarmouth regarding consolidation. What is the wishes of council? Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Right, and just to think some comments up front are useful for the public and maybe even for councillors that are joining us this term. We have 2 new councillors, so just as a matter of a little bit of history, we did engage to an extent with our 2 neighboring municipal units previously about on the issue of consolidation, and consolidation is coming together of your own accord. Amalgamation is kind of a forced marriage when things are not good with your municipal unit. You've got some financial or management problems, and that's not what we have here in this region, thankfully. So, in any event, the what happened last time round, last council, was really, I am neither at this point for or against consolidation. What one needs to do is one needs to get together, with the assistance of municipal affairs and so forth, and the neighboring units, and you need to embark on a process which includes feedback from the public, which includes the hiring of consulting firms and so forth, and you decide on what a potential consolidation would look like together. It's not until that point that you vote for or against, or you're in favor or not in favor of consolidation. So at this point in time, I mean, I can't say there are advantages and disadvantages, but really, the big things that people point out, number 1, taxes. Well, the tax thing will have to be decided on among the units that potentially want to explore this, and it could include area rates, it could include anything at this point. We don't know. That's to be decided. Same thing with the number of councillors. Are we going to have a warden? Is there going to be a mayor? Is it going to be, is the electoral system going to be potentially a district or at large? We don't know the answer to any of those. So those are the reasons that really at this point in time I wouldn't be able to, and I wouldn't expect most people would be able to say I'm for or against consolidation. So having said that, I think it's a good idea, and I look forward to future discussion.
Thank you very much, Deputy Warden. Before I turn the floor over to Councillor Patty Durkee, some people might be wondering out there, what I'm talking about in regards to a motion from the previous council. That motion was made on February 26, 2020, and it was moved by me, the deputy warden at the time, seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion, who's filling in another term, to invite the Minister of Municipal Affairs, Chuck Porter, at the time, and Mark Peck, the Executive Director, who is still in with Municipal Affairs, Policy and Planning, to discuss ways to move forward on consolidation, and further to extend an invitation to the other 2 municipal units of Yarmouth County to attend said meeting. So I just wanted to point that out. Councillor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor, or Deputy Warden Cunningham. I don't think any of us could say yay or nay to consolidation. However, I would like to make a motion that we accept the invitation from the town of Yarmouth to have a safe discussion and determine if there's sufficient interest to proceed with any work on the topic.
All right, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham. Any discussion on the motion on the floor? Councillor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can't repeat enough that this isn't about deciding whether or not we're going to consolidate or not. This is about sitting down and saying, what might this look like? And taking it back to our residents to see if it's going to be beneficial for the municipality of the District of Yarmouth, because that's our first priority. However, if we don't do it, we may be missing opportunities financially, getting things done, essentially. When I think about the Mariner Center and how many years it has taken us to come to a decision to get even the paperwork done, to ask for financial assistance from the other levels of government, it's taken many years for us to get to the point, and I can say that we got there and we've done a great job doing it and we've worked really well, but we didn't always work really well. And I think that's been part of the issue, is that there are a lot of regional projects that maybe we could work together on that aren't coming together. So I would be certainly in favor of sitting down and having that discussion.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any more discussion on that? Since I don't see other mics flashing at this time, I said back then, and I say it again, I absolutely would relish the chance to sit down and have open discussions on this and also having public input eventually. But these are preliminary discussions just to set groundwork, and I wholeheartedly agree. My mind hasn't changed from the time when I made that motion in February 26, 2020. So I would also be in favor of this motion that's on the floor. And remember that this is a recommendation to regular council, so I tried to write down the motion the best I could. Just remember that in a later meeting, later today, during regular council, this is going to be a recommendation from the committee whole, provided it moves forward. So is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, item 7.2 for information. We have in front of us 8 letters, or 8 pieces of correspondence for information. Item number 8, old business. Whoa, I'm sorry. Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know this is for information purposes, for us and for the public, and I just want to draw attention to the 7.2.7, the St. Ambrose Homeless Initiative. I was talking to Mr. Dorian the other day, and he was explaining more over and above this, and I think that, we know around this table that housing is a provincial issue, and the provincial government does have a plan, but I applaud a local organization for stepping up and trying to solve an immediate need. And I was actually looking at these emergency shelters, and he was explaining that these could even be used inside of an apartment that may not be 100% habitable, but it would give them the shelter from maybe the leaking roof or the cold. So I would just like to, draw the public's attention to that specifically, and commend them for doing something immediately for the homeless community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and it's certainly in your purview to comment on something about, for information, if you had anything to add like you just did. Thank you very much. Deputy Warden.
Well, it's a big issue, and thank Councillor Hurlbert for bringing up. I did review those docs, but she's reminded me that really, I think we should invite Mr. Dorian in for a presentation at a committee of the whole to get a little bit more of a handle on this, and it may give us some insight into the homelessness issue. It's a huge issue. It is here in our municipality to an extent, not like it is in the city, but there are issues definitely with housing, and anything we can learn about it, I think will be helpful. So I commend, as Councillor Hurlbert said, I commend Mr. Dorian for the work he's doing and would like to learn more about it.
Well, if it's the wishes of council, I prefer a motion that we have a meeting with Mr. Dorian at a future committee of the whole meeting. I think that would be appropriate, so it's not lost. So is someone prepared to make that a motion?
Sure. Certainly.
So the Deputy Warden, Trevor Cunningham, so what you're requesting, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
I'll move that we move to regular, to our next regularly scheduled council meeting, which is just in a few minutes. A request from staff to Mr. Dorian, or a request from the council, communicated by staff, to Mr. Dorian requesting that he present at a future committee of the whole meeting regarding his work with the homeless through the church.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, everyone, just bear with me. I'm writing down the motion, making sure that it's not missed. It's a little bit different today. Usually when council makes motions in committee of the whole, the regular council meeting is usually 2 weeks later, so I'm just trying to make sure that none of this is missed. So we have 3 recommendations from committee of the whole so far. All right, moving on. Item number 8.1, Placemaking Grant Policy Program, Mr. Mark Blinn, Economic Development Officer. Please flick your mic on and I'll turn it on. As soon as you're ready, you can have the floor.
If I seem a bit sluggish today, it's because I gorged myself on some tasty lasagna this afternoon, courtesy of our CAO. Mr. Chair, Deputy Warden, Councilors, Madam CAO, thank you very much for seeing me here today. First off, I just want to commend Council on the large body of work that you folks have done in the last 12 months. You're to be commended on it. Unfortunately, I think I'm about to add to that bit of work. So I'm here today to speak to you folks about placemaking. This year we saw the creation of the 2021-2025 strategic plan. And in there, under the people pillar, we referred to the desire to develop a placemaking policy. So I'm here to get your initial thoughts on placemaking before we begin to draft that policy. So first and foremost, we should define placemaking. I did a little search on it, and placemaking is the process of creating quality places that people want to live, work, play, and learn in. Some examples of placemaking would be beautification, planters and such of that sort, open public space, creating those spaces, streetscaping like the town of Yarmouth did, banners, lights, baskets, signs, community signs, and things of that nature, sorry. So I did a little research, and what I can tell you is that it indicated that grassroots community-led programs are the most successful and the ones that lasted longer, as were Chamber of Commerce-led initiatives as well. The mechanism to facilitate community-led placemaking, it's often under a grant program. Funding varied. Some of it was strictly municipal funds. There were some that were provincial funds. And there were some that were, the funding came via levies that were administered by the municipality and others by the Chamber of Commerce. So lastly, in creating a policy, we need to know, we need to define placemaking, the actual term, that broader term, define what it means in relation to MODI. We need to determine how it's to be funded. Will it be solely municipal funds, leverage provincial dollars? Will it be levies? Will we match dollars? Will it be a lump sum amount? Will we fund capital or operations or both? And we need a criteria, define what we will fund. Maybe list some examples, if we so choose. Will it include our branding as well? And we need to decide who can do it. Will it be a non-for-profit? Will it be anybody that just shows up and says, hey, I've got a great idea for, and go from there? So as the grants administrator, I'd need to be able to decide if an application has merit. And those are the things that I would need to know to be able to administer it properly. I do have a request. I would like to ensure that we don't stifle community creativity. So if Carleton comes to us and says, hey, we want a Carleton Cletus Christmas tree, we should think about it. If somebody in Councillor Cushing's district says, hey, how about painted Cape Forshue lighthouses painted differently to represent their communities, we should think about it. Or a lobster trap fountain or waterfalls. Lobster traps are all the rage lately, so things like that. I guess what I'm saying is, we shouldn't kind of rule anything out, but, there could be or should be some parameters of some sort. And with that, I would ask you folks for a little bit of input, or if you have any questions whatsoever. The floor is yours.
All right, is there any questions or comments from council? Councillor Warren Cushing, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thanks, Mark, for your presentation. I think the placemaking I think is very important, and I still don't completely understand the whole definition of it, but like you say, we make a definition that is that we use it with our municipality. It would certainly help, and yes, I'm very much in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Placemaking. It's the process of making quality spaces. Yarmouth, the municipality of the District of Yarmouth has some amazing areas that I really feel we have an opportunity to enhance, not only for its residents, but for visitors as well. I know, as being on the Yarmouth and Acadian shores, that we are always looking for areas that can be enhanced so that we can create experiences, and the more experiences and things we have for people to do when they come and visit, the longer it is that they will stay. The longer they stay, the more money that they inject into our community. And I know from experience that many people who have come to visit are now living in Yarmouth County. Yarmouth County is beautiful. We're very lucky. We have been a piece of paradise that people are finally starting to discover. So I think we have an opportunity to look at some of the areas that you have mentioned and more, and decide to use Councillor Cushing's term to build some fluff into the community so that people will understand how much pride we take in the municipality of the District of Yarmouth. We had a visit from Communities in Bloom, and I know that they would certainly be yes, there's money to join them, but they would be a huge asset to us to help in identifying some of those places that could benefit from beautification. And I know that there are the beautification grants available from the province every year. And so we need to sit down and say, you know, where do we start? And I think we need to pick one or two things and go from there and build on that. I mean, I think we've already been doing it with Cape Fichu. And the more we do, the more people it will attract. So, you know, when you talk about building those spaces, we have areas, like, I've hardly ever been to Pickney's Point, but I know it's beautiful. And so what is it that we can do there? I've already worked on and suggested things in Port Maitland, like take our little fog alarm building that's there. We own it. Make it look pretty, put a couple of tables there. There's a little beach on the left-hand side. Put tables on the wharf. The wharf's not used. And I've been certainly trying to push people in the community to sell lobsters. Like, just sell a lobster on a plate and have a place to go sit and eat it. So those are the types of things that we need to look at. We all know, and the province knows, is that the Sanford Drawbridge area as well, although it's a very important working community, people go there to see that drawbridge because it is one of the smallest drawbridges in the world, but we're not sure if it is the smallest, but that attracts a lot of people, and it's not attractive. We did get it fixed. We put money into it. It is working, but it's still not pretty. It needs to be painted. So, you know, we can take some initiative to do those things. There are, I think if we initiate some of these activities, I know we say we want the community to do that, but I think the community will jump on board if we can identify. I know there are people in the community of Sanford who would be willing to help paint that drawbridge, but somebody has to initiate it. And you have to consider the liability side and who's responsible for the insurance for some of these things. But those are some of the things. We're talking about our Milo project, and that to me is huge, a huge opportunity for placemaking. So I am thrilled that we're bringing this forward and working on this initiative from our strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durkee. Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mark, for coming in. Your first comments about, community-led programs, and as Councillor Durkee referenced to Mr. Salos from Communities in Bloom, that was one of the things that he said, Communities in Bloom is there, but it is really a community-led project and something that the community has, gotten into. So I feel that part of what, my thought process for this is that if we have communities who are interested in something, if we can help navigate them through some of those channels and processes of, how do they get the money, how do they, I know that we're open to, open for business, and you're, always available, as a resource, but I think as part of that policy, we really need to make sure that it's clear to the residents and the community that we can help them through some of those, those roadblocks. Doesn't necessarily mean that will be in the policy, but I think that, it's a given that we should be doing that. And I know one of the, back in, I think, October, November, one of the first, council meetings I was at, we were talking about, beautification and lights in Port Maitland. And I'm glad that beautification or placemaking is part of our strategic plan and that we can move forward with some of those things. I know that there, and Councillor Durkee referenced this, there have been some recent beautification grants given to municipalities, within our, surrounding area. So when I saw those, I thought, okay, there's hope that we can, tap into some of those things. So I was, really excited to see this on the agenda for today. And, since I decided to, run for elected office, I was thinking, like, what is there within my district? And I was talking to a couple of residents, and they said, Maud Lewis lived, this was, the place, South Ohio was the place. And I think, for me, if we can get, community, into that, we talked to, the Shag Harbor UFO, if they, if they can have a, Department of Transportation, road sign that says, here's the exit, so exit 34 into South Ohio is, home of Maud Lewis, or, I think that there's potential within our municipality, we all have areas. And so I think that, working on a policy that includes and encompasses is something that I'm excited for. Thank you.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've been talking about this off and on, actually since the very first meeting I attended last November in the form of holiday decorations. And that maybe we weren't willing to take that on as a municipal staff, but if a community group came forward, we'd be interested in something like that and supporting something like that. So I feel like that also falls within placemaking. I've been on a committee through the Chamber of Commerce that's working on a provincial, that they receive $50,000 in making, and what that looked like in the town of Yarmouth to bring residents back downtown to shop local and do that stuff post-COVID. It hasn't all been initiated, but some of the conversations that we went through were, what is placemaking, and what do you want the legacy of that event to be? So they wanted it to be in the form of several different forms. It went in the form of money for concerts or festivals. We were going to host, I can't remember what the theme of downtown, it's like Kitchen Party, if I'm not mistaken, the theme of the downtown. So they were going along with that, where they were going to host 4 events, one a month, for 4 months over the winter. That still may happen depending on COVID, where you'd have music at the event, but they also wanted a legacy project. So part of the funding was going to go towards, and I think they've been ordered, musical instruments that will stay within the community, outdoor musical instruments for kids to play. So that was also part of that funding, so that it wasn't just a one and done kind of scenario. It was something that was left for residents to play and probably drive their neighbors nuts. But just being aware that it can be, placemaking can be anything. And I kind of see that, we do grants for nonprofit organizations in the spring. There's 2 groups of funding, one for
Tourism
nonprofit.
and
Yeah.
nonprofits, yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of see it falling as tourism more than anything, because that's what we're creating, is areas for our own residents and new residents and tourists to come see. So I wouldn't want to see that limited to nonprofit organizations, that funding. It's hard to become nonprofit. It takes, there's annual responsibility to that people just aren't willing to take on, but it doesn't mean they don't have a good project that would be one time, the signs, the banners that the Chamber of Commerce has put up, all those things. And when we did it as a community group, it was considerably cheaper than having staff do it. So, yeah, not limiting them, not limiting the scope of what the grant would be for would be important. And I think it's important that we as a council have the opportunity to make suggestions that might get done, as well as the community. So I'm not sure if that's helpful, but.
Yeah.
I will say one more thing, actually, and it came from a resident when I was knocking on doors, that they wanted to see, and just envisioning, just like Councillor Hurlbert did, in Chebogue, one of the first screw-type propellers for steamships was created in Chebogue, and he envisioned an area maybe around Sand Beach that would be a smaller provincial area, park probably, that recognized John Patch, who was the creator of that, with some type of display of propellers. And when we were doing the research on what placemaking looked like, it was simple things like that, just hundreds of propellers or hundreds of umbrellas or hundreds of anything that just people, hundreds of bird cages that brought people to an area for a specific time.
I know that the District of Clare, they have that small little Petit Sentier, a little trail that they have, and it's painted rocks, hundreds of painted rocks, maybe close to 1,000, but anyway, and that brings people there. And they walk the trails. Yeah, I mean, placemaking, it can instill civic pride, economic benefit, tourism, as you say. It can entice folks from away to move here. And it helps with the intercommunal connectivity if we're talking about signage, community signs and such. And it can inform the public as well about many things, the heritage of a certain region. So, yeah. Thanks for those comments. Yeah.
Councillor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is my thing. I love this. So it's funny that Nick should mention about Sand Beach, because I recall when, after the last election, we went on a little tour, and one of the things that one of the residents, actually one of Nick's residents, who happens to be a close friend of mine, suggested, and that was access to Sand Beach. And Sand Beach was once a very busy little beach. And, when you think of the idea of coming here, either being in town or being in the municipality, when you live in town, to be able to walk to a lake, Lake Milo, is pretty awesome, because you can do that now. And then, with our project, you're going to be able to travel along that. The other way would be able to walk from town to Sand Beach. So you can actually, it would be wonderful if people had a way to walk and access the saltwater in that direction. So that was one of the suggestions, is to make a walkway from the end of the trail to Bunkers Island, beyond that to Sand Beach. I think that would be pretty cool for people, and especially kids in our community, just to be able to go in that direction as well with their parents. I have to add that part. But yeah, so those are the types of thing, to me, that's really important, placemaking. Like, how many places can you live where you can walk to Sand Beach, which is the ocean, or walk to a lake as well? So just throwing another idea out there. Thanks.
Good.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
I wasn't going to say anything this time, but Councillor Durkee brought up a good point about walking, if you're living in the town, walking up through Lake Milo, and then walking in the other direction to the saltwater areas of Sand Beach and whatnot. I know that trail is used a lot going down towards the Sand Beach area, and I believe the municipality has part of that trail. I don't know how well it's looked after and whatnot, but it wouldn't take much to upgrade it and end it at Sand Beach. So it's a good thought. I think, because I do know a lot of people use that, and then they can branch off and go on to the rail trail down on the, used to be the CN trail, so CN Railway, right? But so there is great opportunity out there, and just thinking out loud again, and Councillor Durkee and Councillor Hilton and Councillor Hurlbert were talking about, over in my district, we have a famous artist building over there, the Lucy Jarvis and Helen Weld place over there that's could be turned into a little art museum. There's a lot of history right in there. And I know Councillor Hilton's parents and grandparents from the Pembroke area would certainly know all about that as well as I do, for the Lucy and Helen area there in the Pembroke Beach that ties into it, and Fells Point, and there's numerous places around that could be tapped into for this placemaking, and you just got to be a little creative. And I'll put a little dig in for our little community hall. That was built in 1927, so that's quite a historic piece of property there, and it has some pictures of there of the old Pembroke bandstand used to be there, and there's a couple hats of some musicians that used to be in the band and whatnot. So there's a lot of history in our municipality. Thank you.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to CAO, is it required that we make a motion to recommend this to regular council that a placemaking policy be drafted by staff?
So the directive for that is in your strategic plan, and what we're trying to do is just get a sense of what your appetites are for, where your passions lay, and I think what we're going to do as a staff is go away and start crafting some framework language, some pillar language, bring that back to you, do a check-in, and make sure we're all on the same page, that we're hearing you correctly, and then bring a draft policy to you.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you. So I wish I probably would have thought about it a little bit more, because we've been talking about it forever, but is there any benefit to businesses being able to apply for something like that? I know Councillor Durkee does arts, and I was just wondering if, if you were looking to bring a group to town, would businesses be able to apply for that if you were trying to do, say, an art show, or you know more what you sell than I do, but we talked about communities and us as municipal staff being able to suggest things, but would businesses be able to suggest or apply for placemaking grants through this policy? I don't know if can businesses apply for the tourism ones?
The CAO could answer that question.
Yeah, so the Municipal Government Act does lay out entities to whom municipalities can give money to. And so I think giving money to businesses would be problematic. Having businesses sponsor projects or nominate projects would be a different conversation. There are areas where if a group of businesses are passionate enough about something, they maybe partner with their chamber or partner with an existing group like Communities in Bloom and try to drive initiatives that way. So I think where there's a will, there's a way, Councillor Hilton. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's important to have some language that speaks to that. Like, there's always talk about, Ribfest and, or a fast food truck kind of event where you had 20 or 30 fast food businesses that come to town and take over Main Street, or a brew, same thing with breweries, like all those things. So I'd like to see us support those as best and easily as we can. So, Councillor Cushing talked about the events that he has that go on in his community hall. Those weekly sing-alongs, that's placemaking. That's what placemaking is. So, being able to support them in that way, or encourage them to build on that. So, I don't think there's a limit to what falls under this, unfortunately. Probably for you guys, that makes it more difficult. But and further to Councillor Cushing's, I have several Lucy and Helen photos all over the place. So it was a big deal. I was probably dragged there as a child, but appreciate it now. So all good.
Your folks were placemaking way back when you didn't know it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're also talking about passions, and there's people's mentioned different areas. I also know that there's some benches around that have really no accessibility in regards. I can think of one, for example, is in front of the Carlton Fire Hall. There was a bench placed there. I think it was by Yarmouth Recreation and it's kind of hard for seniors to get there. And we talk about seniors group, and there was one group there. I can't remember the name of it, but they usually walk around the Carlton Triangle sidewalk, and there's this bench there, but there's really no access to it. There's some infrastructure that we have that could be improved, and I do know that there's at least one community group that would like to improve that, along with a community garden. I know the community garden was also brought up every once in a while. We had one person that had approached council in a previous term. Things like that. It doesn't have to be big. Councillor Nick Hilton, I appreciate your bringing up the point about propellers. There's all different sort of things. Councillor Durkee, Councillor Scheer-Hilbert. Yeah, there's a lot of different things. So I'm hoping you can get some direction from this.
Okay.
So if there's no more discussion on that, I trust, Mark, that you have what you need.
You do. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark.
No pressure.
No pressure whatsoever.
Yeah, how did that work? I haven't been in politics long enough, I guess.
Just remember, never give a politician a chance to speak on a microphone because they're going to make the best of it. All right, thank you everyone for that discussion. Item 8.2, request for a decision re the Dayton Greenville Road and Port Maitland sidewalk tender. Madam CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your package was a request for decision that was actually developed collaboratively by myself, the Director of Municipal Services, Director of Public Works, as well as the Director of Finance, although for some reason he escaped having his name on the documentation. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, so the whole team is in the room today, Mr. Chair, and we have before you an analysis of the procurement that led up to the tender bids for the sidewalk. And so we've approached this using professional assistance through Design Point. So we engaged Design Point to do the design work and negotiate with the province on kind of feedback from them and the Department of Environment on where we think we wanted to go with the design. They were also in their contract required to manage the tender process. And so now we've tendered the projects. Council had approved the designs. We went to tender. The tenders have been received and we've analyzed them as a team and with the consultants. All three bids were compliant. I think the ointment in, the fly in the ointment right now is, you know, due to COVID, construction prices have inflated to the place where to do the work that council would like to do, we're exceeding what you estimated your budget allotment would be for that. So if the Director of Finance, Director of Public Works, and Director of Municipal Services want to come down to the presenters table, what we can do is we can go through the request for decision, or it's in your packet. I can field questions on it and the team can field questions, and we can see where we think council's appetite is.
So I guess I seen two mics start flashing. I'll open up the floor to the deputy warden. You have
Yeah,
the
I mean,
floor.
I'm good either way. I think everybody's in the room and we can, I don't think there's much difference between the two, I guess, modalities of doing that work, so.
Yep, so there is a recommendation from staff, Mr. Warden. So I will say, just for the record, that council had approved a budget of $1.193 million and change, and the tenders came in at $1.749 million as the lowest cost, plus non-refundable HST. So there were some options on what to do there. We could partially award the contract, but there are pros and cons associated with that. There are level of service issues, there are citizen engagement issues, there are potential legal issues around that. There are issues with respect to Modi's reputation in with the trades. Responding to these tender calls takes a lot of time and energy on the part of proponents. Another option was to just reject all tenders. We would, in order to go back out to the market, we would have to change the scope of the work, and that's to honor procurement rules and regulations. So we'd have to do that by about equivalent of 15% of the value if we went back, more than 15%, if we went back out to the marketplace. There's no guarantee that construction costs would be cheaper at that point on the per unit cost, and therefore the aggregate cost. Again, you know, we're in a small marketplace. Our relationship with the construction trades is important. We rely heavily on them to deliver the goods and services that council wants to deliver. A significant amount of time and energy has gone into the process to get to where we are today. And again, you know, prices could be higher, and we could be back at the same position. Another option for council is to award the project. So one thing that is kind of working in council's favor with this situation is timing. We position the project for bidding now, but construction in the spring, in April. So dollars wouldn't flow until your next fiscal year. So in the briefing note, we laid out for you the implications of awarding all three projects based on the low bid. What it means is we have approximately a $600,000 shortfall. We could make that up with just over $130,000 from the gas tax fund and the other $500,000 coming from the capital reserve. Every spring, you take a look at your horizon on your capital plan anyway, and you would definitely have to take a look at that and recognize some pieces will have to move. You'll have to make some decisions maybe on timing, on additional savings to recapture the money, on delaying projects, rescoping projects that are on the horizon, those sorts of things. So those were kind of the three options that we laid out for you. It is the recommendation of staff that we do proceed based on the scoring that the three sidewalk projects received when the projects were nominated by council. And based on what we've learned through the pandemic with respect to inflation, it's high lately, no indication that it's going to back off over the next 12 months, and recognizing that the projects have very good value for the citizens, primarily safety concerns, all three of them. So the recommendation from staff is that we do modify the financial plan for the project and we go ahead and award the tender.
All right, I'm going to open up the floor to questions. The first one on the docket, I believe, is Councillor Patty Durkee. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've been working on this for a long time, so I'm going to start it off by making the motion that council gets forwarded to regular council, that council approve the awarding of Dayton Port Maitland sidewalk tender number MODI 21-01 to the Garion Construction Limited for the amount of $1,749,000 plus HST. Ooh. And furthermore, be it resolved that council fund the unbudgeted amount of $631,000 by allocating $500,000 from the general capital reserve and $131,000 from federal gas tax fund. And further, be it resolved, council review the 5-year capital investment plan for reevaluation of projects in light of maintaining sustainability in general capital reserves. And I just want to comment about that with the way things are today, with supply, demand, we can see that, again, inflation is not good at the moment. My fear is if we decide not to do this, then we come back and the costs will be higher. So that I would prefer to make the decision to move this now. And in addition to that, I do believe that the provincial government has stated that they would be increasing the funds that they would be giving to provinces, and we will be getting more gas tax money, so possibly double gas tax money from the feds. So I in favor of moving forward with this.
There's a motion on the floor. I need a seconder. I seen Councillor Lauren Cushion.
Yeah, I can't see him. You over there?
I have the same trouble seeing Councillor Hurlbert as well. My screen reflects off my glass and then it reflects back. It's very hard to see. So, next person on the docket would be the presenter. No, well,
That's okay, that's okay.
yeah. Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to staff for this in-depth overview. As I was reading this on the weekend, I struggle with the fact that that the lowest quote or the lowest bid did come in, considerably over what we had budgeted. Hindsight, I guess, not, and I understand the value of grouping them together as one project, but hindsight moving forward, maybe, when we do talk about, projects that are like, but just, somewhat different, not grouping them together, because I would, I personally am in favor of, I probably won't vote against the motion, but I think that, there is value in looking at them separately, because they were, and this was before my time, but I know when, we went through the, the process of figuring out what was the most important and, the scoring for those, there were some that were less, less in significance or less in importance. And I think that if they had been tendered separately, we would be coming to a different, I feel I would have voted, differently today. It does concern me that, $600,000 has to come from our general capital reserves. Do you know, how does that put us, and I should know the answer to this, but I don't have the budget in front of me. What percentage or what amount does that leave us at in general capital reserves? And I know that's in the next year's budget, but my concern is that it's $600,000 out of a general capital reserve that, when we talk about, looking forward to, asset management and all of those things and making sure we have the right amount of money for the future.
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I see Greg's looking. I think, because we have several reserves, I think the general capital reserve is 300 and some, 3 million, 3.5 million? 10%.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And so just to clarify, if I could, Councillor Hurlbert, the shortfall, 500 would come
Right.
from capital reserves and 131 from gas tax.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you for the presentation on these three projects. Just from my past experience in the business world, if we started breaking these out and doing one at a time, we'll end up paying more. That's the way it usually goes. I would say this is part of our asset management projects that are out there, and I would say let's cut to the chase and approve it, and let's move on and get her done. Thank you.
Deputy Warden.
Yes, and as people are well aware, I'm a self-proclaimed sidewalk king, so. In any event, they are good projects. It is a little bit over budget for sure. We do have gas tax dollars to spend, so that's an advantage. And again, I think we want to thank staff for outlining the pros and cons, and there are pros and cons to all the way forward, certainly. And but at the end of the day, I think staff's made a wise recommendation overall, and hindsight's 20/20, and there is one project that does score of the three that scores higher, but I think they are, having said that, I think they are all very, very important. I mean, Port Maitland has a school right there, so those are things that we all value in the safety factor. And obviously the safety factor is huge in the Hebron-Dayton area. I mean, we've got, what the traffic's like there, so for those reasons, I think it is I'll be voting in the affirmative. Thanks.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's important to see that all three quotes are very similar, so that we know that maybe our original estimate was probably not as high as it should have been. So, if the original estimate was 1.7 million, we probably wouldn't be debating it. We probably would have approved it by now. I had a couple questions. These are concrete sidewalks. We see the town doing asphalt everywhere, which obviously is cheaper. Did we look into that, knowing that we're now spending $600,000 more? Should we be looking at saving? I mean, my father's a mason. I know that concrete probably lasts longer, but I don't know if there is any.
The problem I have is I cannot turn on the leaks thing without Councillor Allen. So Councillor Allen, turn yours off, and as soon as I turn on Abid's microphone, you can turn it back on. So there you go, Abid, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Through the chair, Councillor Hilton. There can be, if we had proposed asphalt sidewalks, we could have saved $131,000.
131,000, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
And right now, as it is, we have to go back to all the contractors to be fair, and they can say, no, we cannot, or something like that. I think the clean way would be to move ahead with this project as is, with the concrete. And next time, we can propose as a deletable item or things like that, so that we can delete it. It was not a deletable item.
Perfect. Thank you. And my final question was just wondering if Mr. Shea had anything he wanted to add where we're increasing the budget significantly.
Thank you, Councillor Hilton. There's nothing particular to add. I was just asked to comment on this RFD through the financial lens. And so, I've been concerned for a little while about we're a little bit aggressive in our capital investment plan in the last few years, and going forward, it's quite aggressive. So my main concern was that, the sustainability of that plan. So my thrust of this document from the financial aspect was just to point that out and to make sure that we do take a deliberate look at our capital investment plan when budget time comes in the new year, so that we're thoughtful about how we're spending and if we can sustain it or not at the pace that we're going to be on. This was quite a bit above our original budget estimates, of course. And we do have different envelopes of money that we can, that we can shuffle around a little bit and pull some funds out of to use, and that's why we recommended it the way we did. In order to meet this tender price, we recommended to pull the 500 out of the general capital reserves and an additional 131 out of the gas tax fund, because the original budget of 1193 is coming from the gas tax fund. So the gas tax fund in particular is going to become quite depleted in the next few years on the pace that we're on. So that was my concern. That's why we wanted to have that's why it's deliberate in the recommendation that we take a deliberate look at our capital investment plan and our strategies in the future and think very hard about our priorities and how we align our work going forward and scheduling it out over time to match our incoming funds. We have different funds coming in from different areas. There's no guarantees of any more bump ups for the gas tax fund from the feds that we're aware of. We did receive a one-time increase last year. So we just have to be a little bit, I'd just like to be a little bit conservative and safe. Okay?
Councillor Cushing. Oh. Councillor Daniel Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Greg. That was a concern of mine when I read through all this. I am in agreement with Councillor Hurlbert. Unfortunately, we didn't split them. At this point, hindsight, I guess, is 20/20, as they say. Yet, I find we're significantly over budget. And I realize what's going on right now in the world, and I understand that everything is being inflated, not purposely, but the cost of things are going up. People are busy, and I understand that. But we are also dealing with, we budgeted so much for this. It's a 50% increase. That's huge. It's not a 10%, it's 50, that's huge. And I agree, I kind of think moving forward, when we get something like this, I disagree with Councillor Cushing. I know what he's saying, that if you split it up, it could become more expensive when you go through this kind of route, but there should be different options maybe. Next time, we should really think about that, looking at either have it divided or a unit price, so we would have an option on which way to go back to market. I hate seeing us put ourselves in a situation where when we're dealing with the tenders and dealing with industry that we paint ourselves into a corner where we don't want to tarnish our reputation, but I also don't want to give the money away. As Mr. Shea said, we've got an aggressive plan moving forward. We want the municipality to thrive. We've got huge plans moving forward, and $500,000 doesn't go where it used to apparently, but it still goes a ways. I know going back to industry is a long process, and I really don't want to do that. I will probably be voting in favor of this, but I'm a little wavering. So, you know, I know they're all great projects. I know they're needed. As Councilor Hilton said, I see the town doing asphalt on the Haley Road, and I believe they received funding, some type of, you know, funding for that, and so I'm just wondering, like, you know, if we went back to industry, could we be applying for some of these funding? Because I know the Greenville Road would be kind of going to the trails. Is there rails to trail money out there? Is there ways to offset some of the costs of the higher price? Anyways, I just have a lot of questions in my head that are bouncing around here right now after seeing the numbers. It's just, you know, we weren't the ones that came up with the budget. We went out to, no, anyways, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money over. I'm disappointed. I can't help that, but, you know, it is what it is.
You can answer that question.
Sure, so I think for context too, it's helpful to remember, when did we do those forecasts on the numbers? When did we set the budget? It was, I don't even know if we were in COVID when we did the original calculations, and they were based on historical costs and experience at the municipality. Then when Design Point did the design, they gave us Class D confidence level pricing, which was above the 1.193 million, but it certainly wasn't 50% above. And so the market rate came in at even higher than that. So just for a little context in terms of, you know, what has happened from the time we did an estimate on what we thought we'd need for this work to actually getting the tenders. And it's taken a while. I think we've been over a year going from green light from council to design to getting the tenders. So a lot has definitely happened. And I think to answer your question, Councillor Allen, because of the rigors of procurement processes, and it's so heavily legislated, really to do what you're suggesting is one of the options. Cancel everything, go back and redesign, but that comes with risk. And you can, it's within your purview, but just so you understand the pros and cons.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, then Councillor Lauren Cushing, then I'm going to speak.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I know that, and I apologize for not knowing the exact ins and outs of the Design Point design, but I would be remiss to not mention, you know, making sure that from an accessibility purview, that we have the proper tactile things in place, you know, when the sidewalk starts and ends. And I know that we can learn from, you know, our community, but I just want to ensure that when these are actually built, that they're built to a standard that is better than what we currently have, and, you know, we were talking at the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting earlier this week about the tactile, so we're talking about the, you know, the bumps that are, you know, there, and recently in the town, they're there, but there are some wheelchair users who are having difficulty navigating those on the way up. So we know they have to be there for, you know, visual, you know, interest, or people who, you know, lack, you know, have sight, you know, disabilities, but we want to make sure that wheelchair users also do not have a problem navigating those. And we had feedback that, you know, when in the future when we do implement things, and I get, you know, the sidewalks are, you know, probably one of the first things that we will be doing, and we don't have our accessibility advisory plan, you know, in place, and, you know, but that will be coming to council soon in the new year. But just being cognizant, if it's not part of the Design Point design, that I don't know if there's a way to ensure that it is, or to make sure that when we're moving forward with this build, that it's done as correctly as we know it to be true. Thank you.
Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I want to make 3 points. When the estimates were done for this project, of course, it was either prior COVID or during COVID, and we know everything's gone up. There's nothing we can do about that. Number 2, pavement versus concrete. Concrete will certainly outlast pavement. And the most important one of all I'll mention is number 3. This is why asset management is so important for us to keep going. A bid is here now. We have some great staff under him. and we will be able to manage better of what we're making decisions on with the information from the asset management plan that we're developing for the municipality of Yarmouth. So we can beat this all we want, but those are the cold realities of it. We need the asset management plan so that we'll know where we're going to go in the future. So thank you, and I'll certainly be voting for this.
All right, thank you, everyone. I said I was going to speak. We just remember some of you have spoken twice. All right, I was one of the ones who said at the original thing, I have no problem moving forward with the original estimate of $1.193 million. This project, due to circumstances that were not within the municipality's control, has ballooned. It's ballooned by, it's a little bit more than 50%. I don't have a calculator in front of me to figure it out. But there's also something that the financial officer had stated, and I had wrote this down in my notes. Our capital investment plan that we currently have is quite aggressive. And we were told back during budget time that it was very aggressive. And how are we going to pay for that? There's a lot of projects that the municipality district of Yarmouth has out here. We currently have a tender out for phase 2 out at for the look-off at the Cape Shoe light station. We're also considering doing work at Milo. So my question to everyone that's sitting around the table, either number one, we're going to have to raise taxes, or number two, we're going to have to cut something if we move forward with the way it's put here. Just remember that when you vote, because the taxpayer are the ones that are ultimately paying for this. And this, for me, as much as I hate to say this, and it's, I know that we've scored these, and I have no doubt that these projects need to go forward. I have no doubt of that. But 50%, come on. I'm a little bit of a financial hawk, and I took great interest when our finance officer said that our capital investment plan is aggressive. We're going to have to cut something or raise taxes. That's the bottom line. So are you prepared to move forward with this as per the recommendation and the motion on the floor? Or, I guess before I say anything else, I'm going to ask a question to the CAO. The bid was for 60 days. When does that expire? When does that expire? When do we have to make a decision?
In December, yeah. I think we're good, yeah.
So we can't, so we can't defer a decision on this until January.
Well, we could ask the bidders, we could ask for an extension from the bidders. We could do that. No guarantee they'll say yes, but we could ask.
Ugh, I hate these tight timelines. I've read over this quite a few times. This is actually one tender document that caught my eye, and I've read over it a lot. I specifically went through this to understand, but it always come back to it's more than 50%, and there's other projects we have out there, and what am I willing, me, not the rest of you, what am I willing to do? Am I willing to raise taxes? Yeah, I don't think so. Not too much, not by that amount. To raise the amount of money that we need to fund the overrun on this project, we'd have to raise the tax rate by about 8 cents. Just think about that. And hope that our capital investment plan will move forward as we have sitting there without modifying it. This is just something to think about before you cast your vote. I really want to put this project forward, but I don't know what I'm prepared to do after this, the consequences. I just wanted to make that clear. I do believe that these 3 projects have merit. I do know that COVID-19 has thrown a monkey wrench into just about everything. The contractors around here are extremely busy. They would have to probably hire more people to complete the project. Those are circumstances not under our control, period. But 50%, man, that's a lot of money, and I'm gonna stop right there. If there's no more discussion, I'd entertain some more comments or a question on the motion. Question being called on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Nay. A vote of 6-1, motion is carried. Thank you very much, council. So that is going to be moved forward to the regular council, correct? Today. And I do believe I have the full motion, I think, that was written down, or that was mentioned by Councillor Patty Durkee to award.
It's in the package.
Yeah, it is in the package, so, yeah. So I'll make sure that that's not missed. I'm sure you will remind me of that. So thank you very much, council. That was a very good discussion on that project. Okay, moving on. Item number 9, new business. Request for decision hours of operation. You all have that in your package. Is there any comments, questions, concerns, discussion? Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you to CAO, just for clarification, do we need to read this entire resolution now to move it forward to council, or do we, I'm not sure how to properly proceed.
I think ordinarily we would read it all into the record, but if you would like, if you're interested in a motion, Councillor Hurlbert, you could say that you would like to adopt the resolution as presented, and maybe in council we'll read the whole thing.
Okay. I would like to make the motion that we recommend to regular council to adopt the resolution as provided.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. In reviewing this document, I'm thankful that the municipality is forward-thinking enough to know that work-life balance is important and service to our residents is very important, and, you know, extending the hours of operation, I think, is a great way to provide that service to people who work 9 to 5 and, you know, can't, you know, afford themselves of the municipal services. So I am appreciative to staff for investigating this option and moving it forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't see any microphones flashing. I'll have a couple words to say. I wanted to speak first. I thought long and hard about this, but there is a few key things in there. This is to be reviewed after a year. I appreciate that. I personally wished that the hours of operation would have gone past 5. Someone like me, who works 8 to 5, if I work in, I would still find it extremely difficult at times to get into the municipal office during the working hours, and I do know they'll be extended, but as it's stated here, it will be reviewed in a year's time. Anything can be improved, but I would agree that we move forward with this as presented, and I have no problem with that, but I do have a little bit of solace that we'll find out if it worked, if it didn't, things that can be improved. The hours of operation down the road, what I'm talking about is if we needed to extend our hours of operation, say, till 6, that would mean a financial impact to the municipality, and I just spoke earlier about a financial impact to the municipality. I do know that would have bearing on that, so I'm willing to give this a try, if provided staff's willing, which they are. So I would be also in agreement of this motion. So, question was being called. All those in favor, moving this forward to regular council, signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. I gotta running out of paper to write stuff down here. Item number 9.2, 2022-2023 Wellness Program.
Thank you,
Madam
Mr.
CEO?
Chair. So there's no documentation in your package, Council, because I basically want to chat with you about an idea. I have a little bit of information for you about it, but what I'm chatting with you about this afternoon, I want to contextualize around, if you have an appetite, we would plan for this in the next budget. So our partners at the town of Yarmouth have in the past and are continuing to support their workplace wellness program by providing subsidized memberships to recreation facilities. And most recently, the town council had approved some funding to provide some support for employees of the town of Yarmouth to become members of Mariners on Main. So I did a little analysis to figure out, what would Mody's exposure be if council wanted to contemplate a program like that. So assuming all members of staff and all members of council wanted to take advantage, and they all wanted a household annual membership, if we looked at a 50% cost-sharing arrangement, which is what the town is doing, our financial exposure at the current membership rates would be just over $13,000. We did poll staff to kind of get a sense from staff on, what's the appetite. And we had 5 people kind of put up their hand and said, yeah, I'd be interested in that. So, we should expect 25 to 30% of people who qualify for a program, if you approve it, to probably take us up on it. So I guess what I'm looking for today is an indication from council on whether or not I can slide this into the budget conversation for next year as part of our wellness program. Moving forward, we invest in Mariners on Main, and we invest in it because we think it's so good for the people who live in our community. So to help make it even more accessible to our own staff, I'm kind of suggesting that this, again, is forward-thinking, it's a continuous improvement. And of course, it also sets an example for the community that having a membership at Mariners on Main is valuable and worth the investment.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam CAO and staff, for bringing this forward. I would be fully supportive of this. Do we need a motion today to move this to regular council? So I would move, sorry.
Just maybe to the budget process,
Okay.
Councillor Hurlbert?
So I will make the motion to move to regular council the approval of up to 13, sorry, would we say just 13,000?
I'm just wondering if maybe we just want to develop a policy around corporate membership for staff and council at Mariners on Main.
There. So moved.
A motion by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, and I did hear Councillor Nick
Thank
Nick
you.
Hilton, you seconded it, obviously, if you were going to move it. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Patty Durkee.
Yes, ma'am and sir. I totally support this and think it's a great idea. I think it's really important for health and wellness, that we all have the opportunities to get out there, and it just shows that how, what's the word I'm looking for, invested we are in activity, and particularly Mariners on Main / Mariners Center.
There you go. Councillor Ward Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Although this wellness program is focusing on Mariners on Main, but what about the people who, staff or council members who really don't want to go to Mariners on Main, but perhaps they'd like to go to the golf course? Could we have a membership, stuff like that? Why do we pick just one place? There's other activities that call for memberships and whatnot, but I'll just use that for an example. Why are we just singling that area? Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Cushing, I think the biggest difference is that we're investors in Mariners on Main. That's not to say, and I have seen policy where, to Councillor Hurlbert's kind of original line of thinking was that councils set a budget and they support staff and council to have memberships and activities of their choosing, and there's a maximum allotment per person per year. and, you know, there's verification requirements and things like that. So, I mean, that is definitely another approach that could be taken.
Councillor Daniel Allen.
Well, Counselor Cushion, you just scared me because you read my mind. I was thinking the exact same thing, because I'm just gonna, like, perhaps we have employees that have memberships at even other gyms, right? How does it work for them? Like, we may be paying half for someone to join Mariners on Main. I don't want to be perceived, I know we're investors in Mariners on Main, but I do not want to be perceived as taking business from some of the local businesses that are privately owned, that are trying to make a go of it, and taking maybe people that are members there and bringing them to Mariners on Main because we're supplementing them just to go to Mariners on Main. So just to keep that in mind, that was, to be honest with you, that was my biggest hang-up when we were investing in Mariners on Main at the time. Was I was worried about being competition to people that are trying to run their own businesses, and I wanted it to be considered, and we looked at that. Mariners on Main is a great investment and stuff, but I just don't want to be seen as a council forcing our employees to go one way. And so in essence, I agree with what Councillor Cushion was saying. I never thought about like golf memberships and stuff. I just, when it comes to the wellness aspect, but golf's definitely an activity, and it's a physical activity. Not the way Lauren plays, but some of us, but no, I just want to make sure we do. It's all about physical fitness. It's all about health, and it's all about wellness. And I just want to make sure if we're going to develop a policy around it, we look at all, we make sure we're taking care of everything.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
I'm happy Mr. Shea left before we started talking about spending more money. Oh, okay. I actually agree with Councillor Cushing and Councillor Allen. And I think of my brother who works for Nova Scotia Power, and each year they're allotted $100 or $200, I can't remember, towards an activity that creates wellness, not just physical, anything. Like, he's into woodworking, so he buys $200 worth of tools each year, or whatever it is that he's given, and that means a lot to him. So I would make an amendment to the motion to create a policy, a wellness policy. I'm not sure how that would be worded, but it could be a certain certain amount each year, hopefully within the same amount we would have spent anyway, because this is going to increase the usage of the policy tenfold probably. A wellness policy that each member or each staff, or I don't know, does it even apply to council? I don't even know. When they can use it towards something that they provide, like an activity that they find creates a better sense of wellness for themselves, I guess. And you're bringing that back to us anyway before approval, and it's going to budget before approval, I'm assuming. This is for next year?
If I can, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
on process.
I'm just trying to think. I think he said he wanted to make an amendment.
Yep,
Yeah.
and I think we have the essence of the amendment.
Yeah.
There's a question in there.
Go for
I'll
it.
just address the question. So I think what we would do is nail down your policy, and then that'll inform the exposure that has to be provided for in the budget.
Yeah, I mean, the downside is we pay the deficit to Mariners on Main, so the more we invest in Mariners on Main, the less budget we pay. And this takes away from that, or less deficit we pay.
Right, so then, I'll just wait for the.
Because I'm
that's
trying
right,
to
I'll wait
figure
for
out
the
exactly
parliamentary
what this
process,
amendment
yeah.
is first. So the amendment is to include other activities other than recreation,
Yeah.
Mariners on Main.
other than Mariners on Main.
Other than Mariners on Main.
All right, so there's an amendment on the floor. Is there a seconder to that amendment? Seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Deputy Warden.
So are we talking about 50%, like, like in terms of, you mentioned 50%, because you've thought about the Mariners on Main piece quite a bit. Is it 50% up to a certain amount, all those types of things, like a golf, yeah, or is it moderate? I think we better be careful and,
So what I was pitching to council, and what I think the original motion is picking up on, is that it's 50% up to X.
I just want to make that clear.
Yep.
You can just
I would hesitate to go just X dollars, because we want a cost-sharing relationship. We want to come alongside everybody and help. Yeah.
Councillor Durkee, you have the floor.
Okay, so I think I know I'm understanding this. So for me to join Mariners on Main and for Nick to join Mariners on Main are two different numbers, because I'm an old fart and he's not. So I might qualify for seniors, so my amount would be less than Nick's. So do we allocate a specific amount and say, I'm just throwing a number out there. Each person gets $200 to use towards a membership, so that it's the same for everybody. I guess that's what I'm asking.
Well, I'm not sure, because the pricing structure for Mariners on Main is really interesting, because they have an adult price, a youth price, and a household price. So actually, you and Councillor Hilton, if you bought
we did
one just for
household.
yourself, it would be the same. But there's household pricing, so that exposure of $13,000 assumes everybody gets a household membership and we're paying half. Right?
Right.
So, the notion about X% up to X dollars, it does kind of level the playing field, because my activity might not be as financially intensive as your activity, but if it brings me an equal value in wellness as your activity does, that's the goal, right? Is
Right.
wellness. Yep,
Right.
Yep.
But those are just the things that
Yep.
you have to look at, right?
for sure.
Thanks.
Deputy Warden.
yeah, and where we're opening this up to other activities, just maybe in the policy, because, somebody could say, well, I'm part of a wine tasting club, and that's, what I mean? That's kind of out there, but, yeah, I think almost like we have a list. It may be that we think a little bit about a list, because, and I'm sure you will, and that's kind of a silly example, obviously, but, hey, it could be a mental health thing, it's wellness. What we've been talking about, it just is wellness, so I just wanted to make it clear, really, how big that list is going to be. And I guess how far away is the list going to be? So are we going to be supporting, we've talked about the golf club, which is Yarmouth, which seems reasonable, the municipality, but what happens if somebody wants to go to Digby for it? All those types of things. So is it also, is part of the aim also to support our local community businesses and infrastructure?
Yes.
Right? I would think, but maybe that's something that should be put in there as well.
In theory, this is a good idea. I'm excited to see what comes out of it, but I will say this, and it's not up to the Director of Finance, it's up to us. We're talking money again. And we're also talking to what some can call entitlements. I agree with moving forward with the policy work, but we'll see where it goes from there. So there's an amendment to the motion on the floor. Is there any more discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, motion carried unanimously. So now we're back to the main motion. Is there any more discussion on the main motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, motion carried. Madam CEO, is a point of clarification when this goes to regular council. What exactly goes there? The amended motion, including the,
Yeah, the amended, yeah. So what happens is, when there's a main motion on the floor and then there's an approved amendment, there's no more main motion, it's an amended motion.
yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to put your amended motion. I'm just trying to get that clear before, when we go to regular council. Before we go to regular council, we will be having a short break. Just a reminder to everyone. All right. Moving on, item 9.3, Accessory Advisory Committee Citizen Honorariums. Madam CEO?
So money was not necessarily the theme of today's committee of the whole, but it's rising to the top. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to rely on the chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, Councillor Hurlbert, to help fill in any gaps and certainly help field questions. So as you know, the municipality of Yarmouth has actively and aggressively been working away to fulfill its mandate to deliver on the accessibility standards through a plan that the province is requiring that we do, and of course is the right thing to do as well. So a key piece of the Accessibility Advisory Committee is participation by the people that we're trying to help, that we're trying to support, or advocates for the people who need the help and the support. And we've struggled to get the citizen representation around the table. In fact, we've come to you to amend the terms of reference twice to try to be able to get the work done in a way that honors the spirit of the way the work should be done. And so, you know, Councillor Hurlbert and myself and Darlene LeBlanc, our Director of Corporate Services, you know, we've had lots of discussions about what else could we do differently. And, you know, we've got some advice in terms of recruiting to the committee through referrals from people like yourselves, the councillors who know your communities, you know your electors. But something else that has cropped up through some of the conversations is that the individuals who we'd like to be on the committee and participate and help inform the recommendations to council, they have significant life barriers to just day-to-day life, going to get groceries, you know, going to a doctor's appointment, you know, navigating their social activities. And we're asking them to put up their hand and volunteer and help us out in the long run to help them out. But there's challenges for them for those sorts of things. And what we've uncovered is that some individuals, because of the nature of their life circumstances, financially leaving the home has an implication for them. Just leaving the home has an implication which can be difficult to meet and to manage. Sometimes they need an additional support which costs money, and maybe they can afford it, but maybe they have to be careful about spending that money and some of those sorts of things. So in chatting with Councillor Hurlbert, I said, you know, why don't I just take a look around and see if other municipalities are helping helping citizen reps on accessibility advisory committees to participate by helping to offset some of those financial barriers. So Jenny helped me reach out to some municipalities. We didn't get a lot of response, but we do know that some municipalities are offering to an honorarium to citizen reps who attend accessibility advisory committees, and also offering to pay their mileage to get there as a mechanism to hopefully remove a barrier to their participation. So what I'm suggesting to council is that if you kind of like the idea that we kind of roll up our sleeves and we go to work and we try to figure out what would be an honorarium we would recommend to council, and some other kind of framework pieces around that, which would be amendments to your terms of reference for your Accessibility Advisory Committee. I'm probably left gaps, but I'm going to look to Councillor Hurlbert.
This isn't something new. Previously, I think it was on my first term at council that we used to have honorariums, but and they were removed for good reason, in my opinion. However, in regards to the Accessibility Committee, I've actually asked around to a couple people that would possibly like to attend meetings like that, but their mobility issues were the big factor, and the cost of them actually leaving their household, as you mentioned. So, yeah, I do believe, Councillor, because I do believe there was pointed out to Councillor Hurlbert to add to this conversation, so as soon as I turn her on, please hit your mics again. Councillor Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam CAO and Council, for entertaining this idea. As the chair, as you know, we have struggled, just as CAO Brooks has pointed out, with finding people who are best represented to help us through this process. I am no expert. I have learned a lot over the last year, and I continue to learn. I do also want to point out to council that we do offer the option of our committee to participate via Zoom, so we can actually be here in the Councilors Lounge and someone can join us via Zoom, and that has happened before where we've had the blended meeting. So that is an option, but there are, as we know, there are connectivity issues within the municipality, so that isn't always an option for someone. So I think entertaining the idea of compensation, the whole point of the Accessibility Advisory Committee is to figure out where our barriers are, and if one of our barriers is we can't even get people to serve on the committee because there is a financial barrier, like it's kind of like the hamster on the wheel, right? And so I really appreciate, you know, the time and energy that staff have put into, you know, bringing this forward to us. Thank you.
Deputy Warden.
Yeah, and I would agree with Councillor Hurlbert. I think this is really an equity question, and the committee, certainly there's been, I guess there's a proven need. We haven't been able to get folks to serve, and because, I think, largely because of the barriers. So I think we need to provide a solution. We have to go out and get those people, and by getting them, I mean go out and get community members who can serve us well by removing the barriers. And thank you, Councillor Hurlbert, for allowing those Zoom meetings. But having said that, again, we'd like to increase the accessibility for those folks and enable them to attend in person if possible or where possible. So I think it's a good idea, and I'm sure our CEO will find a workable solution for us.
Absolutely. I think it absolutely falls into our strategic planning where diversity, equity, and inclusion was brought up, and this certainly, in my opinion, would fall under that, because the inclusion piece would be mobility, I shouldn't say issues, but challenges. Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I too sat on the Accessibility Advisory Committee with Councillor Hurlbert, and as Councillor Hurlbert mentioned, it's been a tremendous learning experience since we started this committee, and my goodness, just the information that is coming to us. And I just want to, I'll end my my little talk. I think it's a great thing, and we certainly got to reach out to help those that need help. So I just hope that we're not going to talk the walk, but actually walk the talk. So I think we're going in the right direction. Let's keep it going that way. Thank you.
So I seen a bunch of discussion went around the table. I would entertain a motion in regards for staff to investigate this initiative. Councillor Hurlbert?
I will move to regular council the approval of staff investigating and bringing back to council appropriate citizen honorariums for the Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Yep. Motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushing. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Council. And thank you very much, members of the Accessibility Committee, for bringing that up. A lot of people don't realize the challenges that some people have, and I would certainly be ignorant to some of those challenges. All right. The next thing on the agenda is the absence of the warden in January 2022. This is just to notify everybody that provided the COVID-19 regulations allow me to travel, I will be away from January 21st, 2022 until January 30th, 2022. This is for your information. We don't know what the regulations are going to be in regards to travel and or COVID restrictions, so I was sure that I was going to be going away here about a week ago, but that is certainly up in the air. So if I cannot travel, I will be here. All right, there's no in-camera items for the committee of the whole, so I guess a motion to adjourn, it would be in order. Moved by Counselor Daniel Allen, seconded by Counselor Lauren Cushion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried.